Shalom to all my sisters who are watching. This is a presentation I'm going to be giving to assure my sisters who are watching the truth about Karaite Judaism for you as a daughter of Elohim, the Most High, Yehovah. He loves you so much. You are not beneath any one of his creations. When he created, let's begin with this. In Bereshit, the beginning of Genesis, Elohim states that he made man and woman, male and female, in his image. Both in his image. So therefore, I want to begin at that point. We, and I mean the daughters of Elohim as well as his sons, were created in his image. Never forget this valid and most important point. He breathed his breath, his spirit, into our souls. Elohim, throughout Tanakh, for my sisters, a lot of times it may be difficult because everything you hear is him, he, his. But there are many examples where Elohim is described and describes himself in a maternal fashion. For example, in a motherly way. For example, in Isaiah chapter 49, we read that Elohim is basically answering the question of Israel, saying, Zion says, Elohim has forgotten us. And Elohim says, as an example of all the things he could state as an example, he says, can a woman who is feeding her baby, I'm basically paraphrasing here, can a woman, a mother who is nursing her baby, forget the baby at her womb? And he says these words, though she may forget, I will never forget you. This is very, very special for all of you, my sisters, the daughters of Elohim. This is his example. These are many examples. For example, of course, he is regarded in the masculine many times, but we know Elohim has no gender. His name, Yehovah, has three root words. Haya, Hoeh, Yehiyeh. Hebrew, right to left. Haya, he was. Hoeh, he is. Yehiyeh, he will be. So therefore, in Exodus chapter 3, at the burning bush, he tells Moshe, Ehiyeh, Asher Ehiyeh, I will be what I will be. And then he gives his name, Yehovah, which has the roots. Haya, Hoeh, Yehiyeh. He was, he is, and he will be. He is the eternal. He is not a man. His name is not Tom or Dick or Harry. He is the eternal, beyond comprehension. Therefore, in the book of Proverbs, chapter 8, chapter 7, chapter 9, the whole Proverbs of chapter 7, 8, and 9, when he's talking about his wisdom, the wisdom of Elohim. And interestingly, the wisdom of Elohim is in the feminine form. Read it for yourselves. It's so beautiful. Read the beginning of chapter 8 of Proverbs, and then read chapter 9. Read the whole thing in the feminine form. Now, I'm not saying he's either or, but I want you to see that Elohim is not siding with one or any gender, because he is beyond that. He created us in his image. So let's begin there. Welcome, all my sisters. Let us begin. What is the role of Karaite, daughters of Elohim, our sisters? Women have equal status to men, period, in Karaism. When the Torah commanded that the entire nation come before and gather to have the Torah read in public, it states there on Sukkot, every seventh year, it explicitly mentions both men and women are required to come and learn the Torah. Not just the men, the women as well. It's very clear. Women have an equal obligation to keep the entire Hebrew Scriptures and to study the Hebrew Scriptures. Yes, men and women. We are both required to wear tzitzit, the fringes, the blue and the white. We are required, both of us, to keep it. Women in Karaite tradition have always been considered equal, period. They have never been barred from serving in any religious office. They have never been labeled as second-class citizens or considered second-class citizens. Never. If they ever were, I'd be the first to speak up, and so would anyone else. Get out of this synagogue. Get out. In fact, the information that we have in Karaite legal texts on the different roles of women is usually a reaction to rabbinical injunctions laid against them. So the Karaite community would respond to the rabbinical rules and regulations for women, which are different than Karaite rules and regulations, which are much more open to the daughters of Elohim to have equal status. Okay, so here's some basic portions of the mitzvot and the answers that Karaites gave to rabbinical rules and regulations that were placed upon women to separate themselves and follow closely to the words of Elohim and not the traditions of the Pharisees or the Orthodox Jews. The Torah specifically states a mitzvot, a commandment, applies to men, and mitzvot also applies to women. In all other cases where the Torah dictates the mitzvah, that mitzvah is binding to all Israelites, meaning when it differentiates certain mitzvot, certain commandments we know, obviously, are for men and some are for women. For example, menstruation. This is completely for the daughters of Elohim. We have no business in that section. Also for men, there's rules for men for as far as emission and things to do with a man's bodily parts. So there's differences like this. What about Torah study? You know, a lot of rabbinical orders say that women are not allowed to study the Torah for themselves. So Karaite Judaism says no. Daughters of Elohim must study Tanakh for themselves. They must wear tzitzit. They must follow the commands just as the men do. They are equal because we are both men and women, daughters and sons of Elohim. So I hope you're listening, my sisters. What about divorce and property? In Torah law, a woman can sue for divorce. Yes, she can. She has every right. If a man refuses to give his wife a divorce in the Jewish court, the Jewish court can seize his power of attorney and grant the divorce in his stead. There are no women whose husbands have abandoned them and cannot remarry, or that cannot remarry because their husbands refuse to give them a divorce. This is unheard of. They absolutely can still get the divorce. If a husband doesn't want to divorce the wife who wants a divorce, too bad. The woman has a right to get a divorce. That's how Karaites view, and that's the view in the Torah itself, which is most important. That's what we're trying to follow, the scriptures, not the words of men. Also, a woman's property is hers. It does not belong to the man. Therefore, and it always remains hers. A husband has no rights to his wife's property unless she gives it to him. If they should divorce, her property remains hers, and he has no claim on it. Furthermore, when a woman dies, her children get her property and not her husband. What about the roles of Karaite daughters, sisters, in Karaite Judaism? In Karaite law, female witnesses are just as good as male witnesses. They are equal. Karaites have never made a distinction between the two. Both witnesses are valid in any legal situation. Women have always been able to hold leadership roles. The first woman leader was called Al-Mu'alima, which means the teacher. She took over for her husband when he was killed. And she was the leading Hakam, or teacher, of the Karaites in Spain. This was back in the 11th century in Spain. So yes, we have teachers. We are allowed to have the daughters of Elohim, you, our sisters, can become rabbis. So you are not second class in any way, sense or form. In Tehillim, Psalms, we know that women used to sing in the temple. This is very obvious, and in the traditions we know this. Psalms chapter 46 verse 1, chapter 68 verse 26 are psalms that are specifically and were specifically written by King David specifically for the daughters of Elohim. Yes, our sisters, the daughters of Elohim, you, my dear sisters. They're written for you to sing, to praise. So not only the men were allowed to read from this, but also women. Equality again. And accompanying with dancing and with playing of instruments as well. You had every right to do this. Consequently, women in Karaite Judaism have never been constrained from singing or speaking in the synagogue. When we go to the synagogue, the women speak, they sing, they participate, they get up on stage and are able to read portions. So there's no religious role in Karaite Judaism that is forbidden for women. What about the separation for men and women? Some people look at that. They look at the women are on one side, the men are on the other side. What about prostration when we pray? The women are on one side, the men are on the other side. Well, let me explain this for you. The Torah does separate between men and women in specific instances. Like I mentioned, for example, impurity for the menstruation and for men. So therefore, certain commandments are for men and some are for women. Now, there is a separation in the seating for men and women. However, the reason for this is not strictly gender-based and biased or to claim that any one is less than another. Karaites do much of their praying kneeling down on the floor. When women kneel down, they run the risk of exposing themselves to men that might be kneeling behind them. Therefore, in the Karaite synagogue, women sit either beside the men or behind them out of deep respect for our sisters. This is the rules and regulations of the synagogue. As this tradition is based on modesty and respect for the daughters of Elohim, rather than the exclusion of women or separation of women. This is not the case. There is no dividing wall between men and women. You are the daughters of Elohim, made in the image of the Most High, Yehovah, and He loves you so much. Please read Proverbs chapter 8, chapter 9, the whole chapters. Look at the words of Elohim. This is the wisdom of Elohim is explained in the feminine form. Read Isaiah chapter 49, when he says there, the example of the nursing woman and the baby. Elohim loves his daughters as well as his sons. Now let's really quickly contrast this to Christianity. The words, the filthy words of Paul. For example, in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 34, I'm going to basically paraphrase here. He says, in the congregation, women are to keep silent, like keep your mouth shut. The women are not allowed to speak in the congregation. They are not allowed to speak. In fact, Paul states that a woman must ask her husband at home, not in church, but at home. That's when she asks questions about theology and about teachings. Now, if I heard this, I would be enraged. This person would never return again. Period. I have no business saying this. God forbid anyone says this in a synagogue. They would be kicked out. And it also states, Paul states, that it's disgraceful for a woman to speak in church. Period. So therefore, a woman is required to cover her head, keep her mouth shut. If she has any questions or statements, she asks her husband at home for permission. This is an abomination to Elohim, the Creator. And absolutely obscene to a Karaite Jew. This video I made with love and care for my sisters. You are so precious to Elohim. And I love you, and I thank you so much for listening, and I hope that this was encouraging to you. Study Tanakh. Live the Torah. Breathe the Torah. Don't hold back. Live it. Breathe it. Let it drip down your tongue. The Torah is honey on your lips. Shalom to all my sisters, my dearest sisters. Shalom, and may Elohim bless you immensely. Please study Tanakh every day. study hard, and take in every single verse and study deeply. Don't rush your study. This is to everyone. Never rush your study and read quickly. Take in every verse. Shalom, and thank you.